Across the stars, countless worlds lived under strange laws. Some were simple, like do not steal or do not lie. Others were made by kings, by councils, by empires that rose and fell with time. But among all the rules written in the history of the galaxy, one stood apart. It was whispered, not spoken aloud. It was feared, not explained. It was older than memory itself. That rule was this: do not wake the humans. No one knew exactly when this law was first spoken. Some said it was thousands of years ago, when the oldest alien civilizations were still crawling out of their home worlds. Others claimed it was older than recorded time itself, a warning left behind by beings long gone. The truth was hidden, buried in shadows, but the rule survived, passed from one generation to the next, from one empire to the next. It lived on like a ghost, and it was never questioned. In council chambers, alien leaders sat on their high thrones, whispering the words in secret meetings. On distant planets, soldiers were told before they left for war, never disturb the humans. Even traders, smugglers, and wanderers in the farthest reaches of space knew it. The way a child knows not to touch fire. Nobody argued. Nobody doubted. Why? That was the mystery. Some races believed humans were a story, a myth told to scare children. Others believed they were gods, hidden somewhere, waiting for time to return. And still, others believed humans had burned themselves to ash long ago. But their memory was so terrible that even the idea of them had to be feared. Ships traveling near the old ruins of Earth never landed. Pilots spoke of strange signals, of ghost transmissions that echoed through the stars, warning them away. Explorers avoided the silent zones marked in ancient maps. Those who entered never came back. The few who did spoke no words, only trembled in fear until the end of their days. The galaxy lived in silence around the human's name. There were songs about them, yes, but only sung in hidden corners. Stories too, but they were spoken in low voices, around fires, in the darkness. And every story ended the same way, with death, with ruin, with ash. But still, curiosity is a dangerous thing. On far-off worlds, young scholars asked questions in secret. Who were these humans? Why should they never be woken? Why should one rule bind the galaxy in fear? And when these scholars asked too much, when they dug too deeply, they vanished. Their records were erased, their names removed. It was as if they had never existed. The silence itself became an answer. The silence screamed louder than words. Do not wake the humans. But silence does not kill curiosity. It only makes it stronger. Among the stars, there were whispers of evidence of human hands shaping history long ago. Ancient ruins with strange carvings no alien could read. Empty battlefields where the ground itself was burned as if by suns. Old weapons, rusted and forgotten, that no species claimed as their own. All of them pointed to one truth, though none dared to say it aloud. Humans had once walked the galaxy. Humans had once ruled. And if that was true, then where were they now? Some said they had died in their own fire, destroying themselves in pride and war. Others said they had grown too strong, too powerful, and gone to sleep on purpose, leaving the galaxy alone. A few whispered the darkest theory, that they were not gone at all, only waiting, deep in their ruined empire, dreaming. Waiting for someone foolish enough to wake them. The rule was simple, yet terrifying. It had no explanation, no reason, no history that could be traced. It stood like a wall at the edge of knowledge. The galaxy did not cross it, not because they understood it, but because they feared it. Fear is stronger than truth. And so, for ages uncounted, the rule held. Empires rose and fell. Wars burned across the stars. Worlds were born and worlds were lost. But always, always, the rule was whispered. Do not wake the humans. And yet, in the shadows, in secret places, the question never died. Who were the humans? Why did the galaxy tremble at their name? And what would happen if, one day, someone broke the rule? The audience feels it, the chill, the weight, the mystery. The galaxy is full of wonders, but no wonder is more dangerous than this somewhere. In the ashes of an empire long dead, the truth waits. And soon, someone will break the silence. The ruins stretched as far as the eye could see. Towers that once reached into the sky now stood broken, leaning like tired giants. their shadows stretching long under a fading sun. Dust moved with the wind, carrying the smell of smoke that had never truly left. The ground was blackened, scorched, and cracked, as if fire itself had tried to erase everything that once lived here. This was the home of the humans, or at least, it had been for travelers from distant stars. The sight was overwhelming. Their own worlds were bright, full of green oceans, glass cities, and humming machines. Here, there was only silence. No voices, no laughter, only the weight of something that had ended long ago. Yet, there was also something more. Something unseen but deeply felt, as if the ground itself remembered what had happened and refused to let it go. The visitors did not walk with confidence. They moved slowly, every step careful, their eyes searching the shadows. They had come seeking answers, but already they felt like thieves trespassing on holy ground. The old monuments rose around them, carved with symbols they did not understand. One, a stone pillar taller than 3 men, carried words that were almost erased by time. None of them dared to touch it. The leader of the small group, a historian from a distant world, whispered as if the ruins themselves were listening. This was not destroyed by chance. This was not nature. This was not time. Something terrible happened here. One of the others, a soldier with hard eyes, nodded. And the galaxy gave us the rule, so it never happens again. The silence after his words was heavier than the ruins themselves. Nobody wanted to ask the next question. Nobody wanted to speak of the humans aloud, not in this place. They moved on, stepping over shattered metal and burned stone. Helmets, cracked and broken, lay half buried in the ash. Some still had the faint marks of blood long turned to dust. Pieces of machines stuck out from the ground, their edges sharp, their purpose unknown. The explorers felt the urge to run, to turn back to their ship and flee. But something kept pulling them forward. Curiosity is stronger than fear, and here, curiosity was a trap. One of the younger explorers, her voice shaking, said, "If they are gone, if the humans are only a memory, why is the rule still alive?" Nobody answered. They reached what had once been the center of a city. Here the destruction was greatest. A wide square stretched out before them, surrounded by the skeletons of towers. The ground was cracked open, deep fissures cutting across the stone. At the center stood a monument, larger than all the rest, blackened by fire, but still standing. It was a statue, but not of a king or warrior. It was of a human, carved in strong detail, holding something in his hand that none of the aliens could name. The historians stared at it with wide eyes. They left reminders. They wanted to be remembered. The soldier's voice was sharp, or they wanted to be feared. The group stood frozen, staring at the monument, when a sound broke the silence. It was small at first, almost nothing, a hum, faint, deep beneath the earth. The wind stopped for a moment. The dust in the air seemed to hang still, and the aliens felt it not just in their ears, but in their bones. One of them whispered, "What was that?" The ground answered with a vibration, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. The explorers staggered, their fear rising with every second. The historian's voice cracked. "No, it cannot be." But it was. Lights, faint and hidden, flickered on inside the ruins. Old machines that had been silent for ages glowed faintly, their energy returning as if waking from sleep. The hum grew stronger, louder, filling the air with a rhythm that was not natural. The soldier drew his weapon, though he knew it was useless. His eyes were fixed on the fissures in the ground. "We should not be here." The young explorer shook her head. "It's already too late. We are here, and something else is too." Above them, the sky seemed darker now, though the sun had not yet set. The ruins felt alive. The air carried a weight that pressed against their lungs, and in that moment, they all understood what the rule had meant. The humans were not gone. Their empire might be ash, their cities broken, their monuments burned, but something remained. Something powerful, something patient. The historian whispered words that none of them wanted to hear. "They are only sleeping." The group froze. None of them could move. Their minds were full of the stories they had heard as children, the warnings, the whispers, the rule that had shaped their entire lives. Do not wake the humans. And yet, here they were, standing in the very heart of what was once their empire, listening to the heartbeat of something that had never truly died. The silence of the ruins was broken again, this time by a deep groan from beneath the earth. The ground cracked wider. Dust exploded into the air. The explorers fell back, their fear now turning into pure terror. The soldier shouted, "Back to the ship, now!" But none of them truly believed they would escape, because the sound coming from below was no longer a hum. It was breathing. The wind carried the taste of ash as the explorers stumbled through the broken streets. None of them spoke now. Fear had closed their mouths, but in their hearts, 1,000 questions screamed for answers. Every shadow seemed alive. Every piece of rubble looked like it was watching them. The ruins no longer felt empty. They felt haunted. The historian was the first to regain his breath. His hands trembled as he touched the cracked wall of a fallen tower. This place is not just ruins. It remembers. These walls, these stones, they are full of memory. His voice was hushed, as if he feared that speaking too loudly would wake something. One of the soldiers, younger and less experienced, frowned. Memory doesn't hum. Memory doesn't shake the ground. His hand stayed near his weapon, though he knew the weapon would not matter. Something here is alive. The group pressed forward, following the broken path that wound deeper into the city. They stepped over burned machines, over shattered helmets, over the skeletons of buildings that had once touched the sky. With every step, the humming grew fainter, as if whatever force stirred below had gone back into sleep. But that was no comfort. It only made them feel watched, as if something unseen had tested them and then returned to silence. They reached a large plaza. At its center lay a circle of stones, ranged with careful purpose, now blackened by fire and time. Around it were fragments of metal towers, their designs unfamiliar, too advanced even for the explorer's age. The young scholar bent down and brushed her fingers across the stone. Strange lines were cut deep into its symbols, markings, words. They were unlike anything she had studied before. She whispered, "This is language. This is history." The historian leaned closer, his eyes wide. "Yes, this is their record. The humans left their story here." His voice grew unsteady, filled with both wonder and dread. "They wanted someone to know, someone to remember." The soldier snorted, his fear wrapped in anger. "Or they wanted to warn us. You forget the rule." The scholar ignored him. She traced the carvings carefully, her lips moving as she tried to sound out the shapes. They were sharp, strong, almost violent in form. Though she could not read them, the weight of meaning pressed against her chest. Every mark seemed alive, humming with a silent voice. The historian placed his hand beside hers. "They tell of power. I can feel it. These symbols are not just words. They are echoes of what was. The humans were not like us. They were more." The soldier shook his head. "More or less. More dangerous, maybe. Maybe cursed." The group fell silent again, the air thick with unease. The plaza felt different, heavier than the rest of the ruins. The ruins before had seemed dead, broken by war and fire. But here, something remained. Something still burned, though no flame could be seen. One of the older explorers, a quiet man who had spoken little, finally raised his voice. "Do you not see it? Everything they left here. It is not random. The monuments, the symbols, the silence. All of it has one purpose." He paused, his voice cracking. "It is to keep us afraid." The others stared at him, their faces pale. He went on. "Fear is a cage. Fear is stronger than memory. This place does not need soldiers to guard it, because fear has been guarding it for ages. And yet here we are, breaking that cage." The words chilled them more than the cold wind. They looked at each other and saw the same thought in each face. They should not be here. They should leave, turn back, forget what they had seen. But none of them moved. Curiosity was a chain that held tighter than fear. The young scholar pressed her hand against the stone again. "What if the rule is not only to keep us away? What if it is to protect us?" The soldier growled. "From what? From the dead?" The historian's eyes darkened. "No, from the living." The silence after those words seemed to last forever. Even the wind grew quiet, as if listening. Then, faint and distant, a sound rose once more. It was not the hum from before. It was sharper, more like a whisper carried on the wind. The explorers turned quickly, their eyes searching the plaza. But there was no one there. Only the broken stones, only the fire marks, only the silence, and yet they all heard it. The whisper was not in their ears, it was inside their minds. The words were faint, but they were clear enough to understand. "Do not wake us," the scholar screamed and stumbled back, her hands shaking violently. "I heard it. I swear I heard it." The soldier's face was pale, his weapon raised though there was no enemy to see. "It's a trick, the wind, just the wind," but his voice was empty. He did not believe his own words. The historian fell to his knees beside the carvings, his breath coming fast. His eyes were wide, filled with terror and wonder all at once. "They are not gone. They are speaking still. They are warning us even now." The group pulled back from the plaza, their fear now stronger than their curiosity. But as they turned, they saw something else that froze their steps. In the far corner of the ruins, where the shadows were thickest, a door had opened. It was tall, metallic, smooth as if untouched by time. Light glowed faintly inside, a cold white light that did not belong to ruins. The hum returned, louder now, vibrating through the ground. The soldier whispered the words all of them were thinking, but none wished to say. "We've gone too far." They had come searching for the past, for whispers of history. But what they had found was not history at all. It was present. It was a live dot, and it was waiting. The explorers stood frozen before the door. It was not broken like the ruins around it. It was smooth, untouched, as if it had been waiting. The cold white glow leaking from its edges made the shadows around it seem deeper, darker. None of them moved. The air was heavy, pressing down on their lungs, making every breath feel stolen. The young scholar's voice was barely a whisper. "This is not ruin. This is alive." The soldier stepped forward slowly, weapon raised, though it looked useless against something like this. His hand trembled, but he forced his voice to stay strong. "Doors are made to be opened." The historian shook his head sharply. "No, some doors are made to stay closed." The silence stretched long, broken only by the faint hum that seemed to pulse from beneath the ground. It was stronger now, like a heartbeat echoing through the stone. Every second, it grew more certain, more alive. One of the explorers reached out a hand and brushed the surface of the metal. It was warm, not dead like the ruins, not cold like stone. Warm like flesh, like something that lived. He pulled back quickly, fear rushing through him. "It feels wrong." But before anyone could stop it, the door shuddered. The white light flared brighter. The sound of heavy locks shifting echoed through the air, metal grinding against metal. Slowly, painfully, the door began to open on its own. Dust rose in a cloud, the air rushing out as if the place behind the door had been sealed for centuries. The explorers stepped back, their instincts screaming at them to run. But their feet refused to move. Their eyes were trapped on the opening. Inside was a long chamber, dim and glowing faintly with strange lights embedded in the walls. The air shimmered with energy, alive and sharp, humming louder now. But what caught their eyes, what froze their breath, were the shapes that lay inside. Rows of pods, dozens, hundreds. Each one was tall, smooth, built from dark glass. And inside each, there was a figure. Human. The explorers stared, their hearts pounding like drums. The humans were not bones, not dust, they were whole. Their bodies were perfect, untouched by time, skin pale but alive. Their eyes were closed, their faces calm, as if they were only sleeping. The young scholar staggered back, her hand over her mouth. "They are here, all this time. They were here." The historian fell to his knees, his voice breaking. The stories were true. They never died. They only slept. The rule was not just a warning, it was truth. The soldier's voice cracked, his mask of strength falling apart. "We should never have come here. We should never have seen this." The chamber hummed louder, as if the humans inside could sense the presence of outsiders. A faint mist hissed from some of the pods, like breath escaping from sealed lungs. One pod, larger than the rest, flickered with light across its surface. The glass turned clear. The explorers held their breath. Inside was a man. His face was sharp, his body strong, his chest rising slowly, as if he was already breathing. His eyelids twitched. The scholar whispered, trembling, "He is waking." The soldier raised his weapon, his hands shaking so badly he could barely aim. If he wakes, we are finished. But deep inside, even he knew it would not matter. No weapon they carried could stop what was before them. The man inside the pod stirred again, his fingers twitching, his head moving slightly to the side. Then, with a sound that echoed like thunder, the glass cracked open. The mist poured out, rolling across the floor in waves. The man drew in a long, deep breath. The sound sharpened the silence. His eyes opened. They were not normal eyes. They glowed faintly, golden like fire trapped in glass. The historian whispered, his voice barely air. He sees us. The man looked at them, his gaze steady, calm, and yet filled with a weight that pressed against their very souls. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was command, the kind of command that no living thing could resist. He stepped out of the pod slowly, his movements graceful, controlled. The chamber lights grew brighter as if obeying his presence. The hum became a roar, shaking the walls, rattling the ground. All around, the other pods flickered, their glass surfaces glowing faintly as if answering a call. The scholar backed away, tears streaming down her face. "We broke the rule. We broke the rule," the soldier shouted, his voice cracking. Back to the ship. But it was useless. The door behind them slammed shut with a heavy crash. They were trapped inside with him. The man's voice filled the chamber, deep and powerful. Though he spoke only 2 words, "We." Awake. The sound carried through the ruins, through the earth, through the stars themselves. Machines buried deep in ash lit up with fire. Towers that had slept for ages hummed alive. Weapons that had not been touched for centuries flared with deadly light. The explorers could only stare, their hearts breaking with fear and awe. They had not just broken a rule. They had broken the galaxy's last protection. For ages, the warning had been clear. Do not wake the humans. But the humans were waking, and nothing would stop them now. The chamber shook as the awakened man took his first step onto the stone floor. The mist curled around his feet, glowing faintly in the light of the pods. His movements were calm, steady, almost too controlled for someone who had slept for centuries. The explorers could not look away. They felt as though they were standing before something greater than life itself. His eyes, golden and burning, scanned the room. They lingered on the group, piercing through them as if their souls were exposed. The scholar tried to breathe, but the air felt heavy in her chest. Every instinct in her screamed to kneel, to bow, but fear held her stiff. The historian's lips moved soundlessly before a whisper escaped. "He knows." The soldier raised his weapon again, sweat dripping down his face. His voice shook as he shouted, "Stay back." The sound echoed weakly in the vast chamber, but the human did not stop. He did not even flinch. His gaze shifted to the weapon as if it were a toy, something meaningless. A strange hum rippled through the air. The soldier's weapon sparked, then burned hot in his hands. He cried out, dropping it to the floor where it melted against the stone. The explorers froze. None dared to move now. The man had not even raised his hand. The world itself seemed to obey him. Another pod hissed, its glass trembling. Then another, and another. The room filled with the sound of awakening, like thunder hidden behind walls. The scholar clutched her chest. "No, it's spreading. They are all waking." The man finally spoke again, his voice deep and steady, echoing from the walls. "Too long have we slept. Too long has silence ruled." The historian whispered back, tears running down his cheeks. You were never gone. You waited. Why?" The man's golden eyes locked onto him. "Because the galaxy was not ready. Because fear is the only chain that could hold us." He tilted his head slightly, his gaze hardening. "And now you have broken it." The ground beneath them trembled violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. The explorers turned their eyes to the pods as cracks spread across the glass. Shadows moved inside, more bodies shifting, more lungs pulling in their first breaths in centuries. The soldier panicked, running to the sealed door at the end of the chamber. He pounded on it with his fists, shouting for it to open. His cries were drowned by the sound of machines roaring to life all around them, from the walls. Hidden panels slid open. Strange metallic constructs unfolded, tall machines with sharp edges and glowing cores. They hummed in perfect rhythm with the humans breathing. They were weapons, guardians, relics of an empire thought dead. The scholar screamed, "We have to get out." But the door would not open. It sealed them inside like prey in a cage. The man stepped forward again. His face carried no anger, no cruelty, only calm certainty. He raised his hand slowly, and at once the machines turned their glowing eyes toward the explorers. The soldier fell back, trembling, his courage shattered. The historian, still on his knees, whispered desperately, "Please, we did not mean to wake you. We only wanted to know." The man studied him for a long moment. Then his voice filled the chamber once more. "Knowledge has a price. Curiosity has a cost. You have paid it." Behind him, more pods burst open. The air filled with mist and light. Figures stepped forward, one after another, their eyes glowing in the dark. Men and women, tall and strong, each carrying the same calm, unstoppable presence. The scholar could not look away. She whispered through her tears, they were never myths. They were gods. The man turned his eyes back to the group, his expression unreadable. Not gods, human. The weight of the word crashed over them like a storm. The ground shook again. Harder this time. The city above stirred. Broken towers lit with faint light. Machines buried in rubble powered up, sending streams of energy into the sky. The silence that had ruled for centuries was gone. The empire was breathing again. The soldier collapsed to the floor, his voice shaking, broken. "The galaxy will burn. Everything will burn." The man's gaze remained fixed on him. Not burn, awaken. The chamber blazed with light as more and more pods opened. The explorers huddled together, tiny shadows before giants who were only beginning to rise. The historian's last whisper was drowned by the sound of 1,000 lungs breathing as one. The rule was never a lie. Do not wake the humans. And yet, they were awake now. The explorers could only watch as the ash of the old empire glowed. Alive again, promising a future that none of them would survive to see. The city above stirred like a beast rising from a long sleep. The ruins that had once stood silent now pulsed with light. Broken towers that had been nothing but stone and ash began to glow with lines of energy running through their walls. Machines hidden deep beneath the earth shook free of the dust, their cores humming alive. Casting sharp beams across the night, the explorers pressed against the walls of the chamber, their eyes wide with terror as the humans stepped free from their pods. Each one moved with slow, perfect control, as though time itself had not touched them. Their eyes glowed in colors of fire and steel, and their presence filled the air with pressure that made the aliens' knees weak. The soldier dropped to the floor, clutching his head. "We cannot fight this. No one can fight this." His voice was broken, his strength gone. The first man, the one who had woken before all the others, stood at the center of the chamber. Around him, the machines bowed, their cores dimming as if waiting for his command. He raised his hand, and the tremors in the earth grew stronger. Far above, the ruins of a colossal tower cracked open. From its heart, a massive construct emerged, shaped like a giant of war. Its armor black as the void, its eyes glowing the same golden fire as its master. The ground quaked as it stepped free, a machine the size of a mountain, built for battle no alien civilization could imagine. The historian whispered through tears, "This is their empire. It was never dead. It was only sleeping." The scholar grabbed his arm, her face pale with horror. "If this is only one city, imagine what lies in the others." The soldier groaned, pounding the wall with his fists. "The galaxy never stood a chance. We should never have come here." The awakened man's gaze turned upward. His voice echoed in the chamber, low and calm, yet carrying the weight of thunder. "Our time was stolen. Our empire was buried. But we endure. We rise again." The words were not spoken only to the explorers. They were spoken to the machines, to the ruins, to the very ground. The city answered, shaking violently as waves of power surged across it. All around, more lights flickered awake, roads lit with glowing veins of energy, stretching across the ash like rivers of fire. Towers that had collapsed centuries ago rebuilt themselves, broken pieces pulling together as if obeying a command no one could hear. The world itself bent to the will of the humans. The historian collapsed, sobbing. The rule was never for them. It was for us, to protect us from this. The scholar's voice shook. "Then we have doomed everyone, every world, every star." The soldier finally lifted his head, his face hollow. No, not doomed, conquered. Above them, the giant machine raised its arm to the sky. A beam of golden energy shot upward, piercing the clouds, cutting into the heavens like a blade. Across the galaxy, ships and stations turned their eyes to the dying world. Watching in horror as the signal spread, the man looked down again, his golden eyes locking onto the explorers. For the first time, his lips curled into the faintest smile. It was not cruel. It was not kind. It was final. You were warned. The chamber doors opened with a deafening crash. The explorers stumbled backward into the ruined streets as the humans followed. Stepping into the open air, the wind caught their hair, their clothes, carrying the scent of fire and ash. Yet they did not cough. They did not falter. They walked as if the world itself belonged to them. The ruins were no longer ruins. They were alive, shifting, changing. Monuments glowed, streets hummed, and machines rose from the dust, answering their masters. The scholar fell to her knees, her tears cutting lines through the ash on her face. We broke the cage. We set them free. The soldier dragged her to her feet, his voice sharp with panic. Run, before they decide what to do with us. But running felt meaningless. The city stretched to wide, to alive, every corner now awake. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to escape. The power that filled the air was not just around them, it was inside them, pressing into their bones, their minds. The humans stood tall on the steps of their broken monuments, their eyes turned to the stars. Their leader raised his hand once more, and his voice carried through the air like a storm. Empire of Ash, rise. The ground obeyed. The sky obeyed. And the galaxy trembled. The sky burned with light as the ruined city roared back to life. Once broken towers now stood tall, glowing with veins of gold that pulsed like the heartbeat of a giant. The great machine raised from the earth continued its march, each step shaking the ground like thunder. The galaxy had forgotten the humans, but the galaxy would remember again. The explorers stumbled through the streets, ash rising in clouds around their feet. Every direction they turned, they saw machines waking, doors sliding open, structures pulling themselves together as though the ruins were rebuilding by memory. The soldier clutched his weaponless hands, rage and fear twisting his face. It's over. We cannot escape this, the scholar gasped as another group of humans stepped from their pods, their golden eyes shining in the smoke. She had studied myths her whole life, yet none of those tales had prepared her for the reality before her. They were not spirits, not gods, not ghosts of history. They were alive, stronger than any being she had ever seen. We have brought back their empire, she whispered. The historian stumbled to his knees in the ash, his body shaking. His eyes were wide, not with disbelief, but with crushing understanding. The warning was never a myth. It was the only truth that mattered. Do not wake them. Do not disturb their sleep. We broke it, and now the galaxy will pay. The leader of the humans walked through the dust with calm steps, the golden fire of his eyes burning brighter than the light around him. He moved as though he had never left, as if centuries of silence had been no more than a blink. He raised his hand, and the machines paused, waiting for his command. His voice was steady, carrying across the city, across the stars themselves. We were cast in ash. We were forgotten, but we were never gone. We return, and we rise. The words sank deep into the bones of the explorers. They were not threats. They were not promises. They were facts, spoken with the certainty of history repeating itself, far above the ruined world. The beam of golden energy split into countless fragments, racing into the void. Every fragment was a call, a signal carried across the galaxy. Worlds far away saw it, ships felt it, and in every corner of space. Those who knew the old rule felt their blood run cold. The silence had ended. Humanity had awakened. That the soldier pulled the scholar to her feet, his voice breaking. If even one of us survives, we must warn them. We must tell the galaxy. But even as he said the words, he knew the truth. The galaxy already knew. The humans were telling them in ways louder than voices, louder than words. The ground split open as more colossal machines emerged, their forms ancient yet perfect, their cores blazing with the same golden fire. Each one looked to the humans, waiting for orders. Each one was a piece of an empire reborn. The scholar covered her mouth, her tears falling fast. "We are watching the end of everything." The historian shook his head, his voice hollow. "Not the end. The beginning of what they always were. The beginning of what they will always be." The human leader finally turned his eyes to the small group of explorers. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then he spoke, not with anger, but with cold certainty. "Your kind was warned. The rule was simple. The galaxy chose to forget. Now it will remember." The soldier shouted back with defiance, though his knees shook beneath him. "You will destroy us all." The man's gaze hardened. "We will not destroy. We will awaken. What cannot endure us does not deserve the stars." The words cut deeper than any blade. They were not threats of conquest. They were judgment, cold and final. The chamber of pods still hissed, releasing more figures into the world. Men, women, warriors, thinkers, leaders, and entire people returning to life. Each face calm, each step steady, each presence carrying a weight that crushed the air itself. The city blazed like a sun. The ruins were no more. The empire of ash was rising. The explorers clung to each other, their voices lost in the roar of power returning. None of them could deny it now. The humans had never truly fallen. They had never been defeated. They had only slept, waiting for the moment the stars themselves would tremble once again beneath their rule. As the great machine raised its arm to the heavens, the leader of the humans spoke one final time, his voice carrying into eternity. "We are awake." The words rolled across the galaxy like thunder. Ships in distant systems shook. Worlds paused in fear. Leaders in council chambers turned pale, their hands trembling as they remembered the law that had been ignored. "Do not wake the humans." The explorers looked up one last time at the glowing empire being reborn before their eyes. They felt their bodies break under the weight of the truth. There was no escape. There was no undoing what had been done. The silence of ages had ended. The humans were awake, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again.